Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. This is actually the second time I've seen this movie. I'd watched it, I think, originally with my friend, and I thought it was just okay, and then I rewatched it last night with my dad. Two things. I wish I didn't have to record this in the morning, and in these 2 points I'm going to make are related. And I wish I could have recorded this the same night that I'd watched the movie. Um, As my throat always sounds a little bit messed up, like in the mornings, like I just woke up like an hour ago. Um, but also, I was going to make my review right after I finished this movie, and then my friends messaged me and were like, hey, we're about to start watching a movie, and I found out they were going to watch the Naked Gun remake, which you're also going to get a review of it. I think I might record it like after this review, actually. And I was like, hell yeah, I haven't seen it yet, and it was hilarious, and I loved it. So I'm glad I made that decision, but now I'm just like, damn, it's the morning, I'm not fully awake yet. I'm not gonna have the excitement I want to have to talk about this movie because I'm still like a bit sleepy. And the things I was gonna say, like, they're not as fresh in my head because it's the next morning. That's why even if I have to stay up till like 1 a.m., I try so hard to like record things the day I watch them, where it's like as much as I can remember as possible. So if this ends up being a bit shorter, and I also didn't take notes and everything, that's why. Um, I might have to mute the mic every once in a while just to like cough as well. Okay, so yeah, I'd seen this before, but it was so long ago. Kind of like with the with Bottle Rocket or the Royal Tenenbaums, I didn't really remember much. With this one, I didn't really remember too much at all. It's like I was remembering things as they were happening. I actually loved this. I was surprised. It's like with the last couple I feel like with the last couple Wes Anderson movies I've rewatched recently with my dad, my feelings have very much changed depending on the movie between like my last viewing. Bottle Rocket I liked slightly more, but I still feel like it's like the worst out of my opinion. Moonrise Kingdom, surprisingly, I liked less, and that one keeps going like lower and lower on my list. And it's not even anything with the movie. I think it's just me and having seen it so many times, I'm like a little tired of it. The Darjeeling Limited, I liked it a bit more, and but I still think it's just okay. And Budapest Hotel and the Tenenbaums I loved just as much as I usually do. Those two are still like my favorites and everything. So if this was like a tier list between like the last time I watched and this time, it's like everything like shifted a rank mostly up. But this one I think shifted the most, where not that I disliked this movie or anything when I watched it, but I kind of forgot about it and thought it was just whatever. And then this time I really enjoyed it. Again, could be because like I'm older and it's been so long since I've seen it that I'm kind of just seeing it with a different viewpoint now. I don't know. I feel like I was more focused on it because I didn't remember every single thing that was going to happen, but like, unconsciously I probably knew things and stuff. Like I remembered someone dies in this movie, but I didn't remember which character. Hold on. I remembered like the characters' outfits and their little yellow submarine and the creature that they end up meeting at the end. I remembered like bits and pieces. The thing I remember the most, and what was actually one of my favorite things in the movie, is there's this crew member who's part of the group, who's this Brazilian guy, and he sings just covers of David Bowie songs in Portuguese throughout the whole movie, where it'll just cut to him sitting somewhere with a guitar and singing these. And he's great. I could listen to a whole album of him doing that. And the songs also kind of fit with the plot, too. Not like every time they're on screen, but usually. And I think the David Bowie songs actually kind of just match the vibe of the movie. I don't know how to explain it, but that was one of my favorite things. To the point where I had to look up the soundtrack, and I'll probably listen to it earlier just to hear that guy sing. Okay, let me start with talking about what the movie's about, and then I'll kind of like go off the top of my head of the things I liked, mostly like with characters and stuff. So there's this guy. The main character, this is Bill Murray. Bill Murray's in like 9 other Wes Anderson movies. I think this is the only one where he plays like the main character. And he plays this guy named Steve Zissou, who's like this oceanographer slash like filmmaker. I think oceanographer would be the right word. I don't know. And he's been doing it for like 20 years or something, to the point where like some of the young adults on his team are like, oh, I grew up knowing about you and stuff. So he's like kind of old, but he's sort of like washed up and grumpy, and his films that he makes documenting his adventures aren't like as good as they should be, where this could potentially be like his final adventure. Because his whole thing is that he ran into this creature, this like whale shark thing, and it ate his best friend Esteban, and now Steve wants to go out into the waters and track this thing down and kill it for revenge. And he has a whole team of people I'll talk about in a minute, but there's also his wife, who's played by Angelica Houston. I don't really remember most of the character names, so I'm just going to refer to them by their like actor names. Angelica Houston's character is described as like the brains behind Team Zissou, and she is like smarter than him, honestly. She also has like a ton of money. She's like kind of a rich bitch. She originally was like on his team and then left because he was like doing some stupid stuff, and then kind of like halfway-ish through the movie, his expedition goes wrong. There's like an encounter with pirates, and then it only gets put back on track when she joins again. And then Jeff Goldblum is also in this movie, where he's like this rival oceanographer guy. I don't think he makes movies though, where he's like also really rich, and it's this whole thing where he used to be married to Angelica Houston's character, so they like flirt sometimes, but he's described as being like quote unquote like half gay. I don't know if they were like trying to say he was like bi, even though that's not what being bi means. I'm just taking a guess. I don't know. He's actually in less of the movie than I thought he would be in. Like, Team Zissou, they steal his equipment. They, like, break into one of his laboratories at one point, and he doesn't find out it's them until the very end of the movie, which is kind of funny, where they end up accidentally, like, rescuing him, and he's on their ship, and he says, is that my coffee maker? And they have more equipment than just his coffee maker, but that part's pretty funny. You'd think his character and his own team, Jeff Goldblum's, was going to be like more of a rival or something, but it's more so that like they're the rich ones with all the fancy equipment and this huge ship, and then they get attacked by pirates, and the pirates actually kill everyone except for Jeff Goldblum. So there you go. They're like taken out as a threat like more than halfway through the movie. Team Zissou, as they're called, is also pretty good. I mentioned about Steve. I'll talk about Steve in a second. There's that Brazilian guy, I can't remember the name of, that sings the David Bowie songs. I mean, he does more than that. He's also their, like, safety expert or something. But I mostly just remember him for the music because I absolutely loved his voice. William Dafoe. My dad and I found William Dafoe's character really funny. I think humor-wise, he was my favorite. He plays this German guy. I don't remember what his role is, but he's basically like Steve's right-hand man until like Owen Wilson's character comes along, where he's like incredibly loyal and everything. Sorry about that. He's just pretty funny, man. I don't know how to explain it. It's like his dialogue and stuff, and he's like kind of serious, but he surprisingly gets kind of emotional about stuff, where I felt kind of sorry for him. Like, once Owen Wilson's character joins and grows closer with Bill Murray's character, William Dafoe's character, I think his name's like Klaus or something, starts to feel like threatened by it, and then eventually Owen Wilson's character Ned, his name's Ned, puts Klaus in his place, and then they sort of end up becoming friends. It's kind of nice, but he's a funny character. I liked his son, who's like this little German boy that's like friends with Steve and has a really nice interaction with him at the end, even though he's not like a major character or anything. Ned, as I mentioned, is also a cool character. I remembered that someone dies at the end of this movie. I didn't remember that it was Ned, and I actually got upset about it. I didn't like cry or anything, but I like felt upset, and that hasn't happened yet with rewatching any of the Wes Anderson movies. I didn't think I'd react to his death so strongly internally. It's just I grew attached to him as a character, and I think in terms of character deaths, sometimes I get more upset about them than I expect when it's like a character that's relatively young and has a lot of promise, and you know their whole life's ahead of them, and they, especially if it's the ones where they have like things already kind of planned out in their life, because Ned's whole thing is he thinks that Steve is his dad, and throughout the movie there's like the possibility that Steve's his dad, but it's kind of confirmed it's not by Steve or Ned, but by Angelica Houston's character. She mentions to someone in conference, she says, like, oh, just between me and you, Steve shoots out blanks, which basically means he can't have children. Like, it's impossible for Ned to be, like, biologically his and everything. But Steve eventually warms up to Ned anyway. And you know, the two characters never really know themselves. Or maybe Steve does. I'm assuming he would know that he... No, I think he does know, actually, that he, like, can't biologically be his father. Because I'm thinking back to that dialogue. It was, like, a conversation between Angelica Houston's character and this reporter lady I haven't mentioned yet. But yeah, Steven and Ned, they end up bonding, and that's kind of, like, the heart of the movie, honestly. And they actually end up really close, and Steve, like, finally accepts him as his son and lets him call him like Papa Steve and everything. And Steve even tries to save his life when their helicopter crashes, and then it's revealed that like Ned's dead. It like cuts to his funeral, and I think that's why I got upset about it. There's a reporter lady, I'll talk about her now, that Ned ends up involved with. She's pregnant, but it's not Ned's baby or like anyone else's on team Zizou. And yeah, they end up becoming friends and romantically involved, and then Ned ends up dying, and I was disappointed because I could see him totally deciding to like help her take care of this baby and stuff, and like actually becoming a couple and I mean, I guess they were, I don't know. Alrighty, I'm back. Oh, I was talking about the reporter lady. I thought I'd heard a knock on the door, so I had to get up and investigate. But the reporter lady, she's played by Kate Blanchett, I believe. I don't remember her character's name, mostly because Steve makes fun of her throughout the whole movie. So I kept forgetting what her name was. I didn't like her at first. She's kind of, not completely uptight in like the British stereotype way, but like just a little bit. But she eventually softens, I think, because she grows closer with Ned. And then by the time they're, like, friends and stuff and starting to get more romantically involved, then I was fine with her. Where she's tagging along because she's trying to write this magazine article that might even be, like, the cover story on Team Zizou's expedition to find this creature and stuff. But yeah, she's a character that grew on me. There's also these, I think they're college students or high school students. I believe college students, yeah. They're the interns on the team that are like 7 college students that aren't getting paid or anything. They're just going on this expedition for college credit. And I felt kind of bad for most of them because eventually the group gets kidnapped by pirates, which I'll talk about in a bit. And the interns decide to leave after that. And then Steve tells them, I'm gonna just give you guys an incomplete rather than giving you credits. And it's like, dude, these college students almost died because you were stubborn and stupid and almost got everyone killed. One of them does decide to stay on board, though. Steve says he's going to give the guy an A, and then in the credits, I think it looked like the guy actually ends up joining the team at the end. So for at least one of them, it worked out, but like for everyone else, they almost got kidnapped and killed, and uh, they didn't even get any college credit. I'd be pissed, honestly, if that was me, especially because they have to like work really hard and stuff when they're on there and do a lot of the like physical labor and stuff. The design of the ship is also pretty cool. Like, there is that little yellow submarine, which is. I can even recognize that scene, too, where everyone's in there. Wait, is Ned in there? That's actually funny. I think he is. It feels kind of ironic because there's a scene that looks like that poster at the end where everyone's finally in that little submarine in a shot like that, except it's like way more characters and they get to see the creature. But the thing is, Ned's dead by that point, so he technically shouldn't be on there. That's the other bummer thing too, is that like he didn't get to see the creature or the final film or anything, or meet the reporter lady's baby or any of that stuff. Yeah, but the design of the ship is pretty cool. I like that in typical Wes Anderson fashion, it's shown to us with all the rooms and the way it's described. It kind of looks like a dollhouse, as if with like dollhouses where you can open it and then you get to see all the inner stuff with the little dollies and stuff. It looks like that. I like the descriptions of the rooms. It even looks like that sometimes when the characters are walking through it as well. Like, I remember there's this one part when Steve and Ned get into an argument towards the end of the movie and they're walking through all the rooms as if it was like the set of a play. That's the other thing I like with the set designs and environments in Wes Anderson movies in general, that it's either like things look like dollhouses, especially when they're shown like tiny and from far away, but also just the way that characters will walk around through their environment feels like I'm watching something on stage. I just think it's really cool. But yeah, it's a cool place. They have like a spa. They have an entire library of like ocean research books. There's these 2 albino dolphins. And I think also an orca whale, if I remember right, that like accompanied them throughout the whole journey, which is pretty cool. The dolphins do end up being plot important, funnily enough. But yeah, it's a cool place. Okay, I want to talk about the plot. I'll be honest, I feel like the story gets like way more interesting after their encounter with the pirates, so I'm like trying to remember, because I'm trying to go in order of like what happens before that. Oh yeah, because they're going on their expedition. The movie, it actually starts with showing what their previous expedition was, where Esteban ends up getting eaten and they supposedly see this creature, and you find out like a little bit more about Steve Zissou and such. I thought that was like a cool way to start off the movie. And then, they have to introduce all the crew and the ship and everything, and oh right, I forgot their story doesn't start right away. It's that they have like 10 days before they decide to go out to sea, and there's like a lot of like training montages and stuff, and the reporter ends up joining. Oh, Bud Cort's also in this movie. I forgot about that. He ends up playing their accountant or whatever that ends up getting kidnapped, and they have to go and rescue him. I think I recognized as I was watching that it was Bud Cort, because I looked at the face and I'm like, he looks kind of familiar. I mostly know him from the movie Harold and Maude, but also the voice of Edgar in Electric Dreams. I'm actually used to him in Electric Dreams because I've watched that movie like way too many times that I sometimes forget what he looks like, especially because he's like older here, because this movie's from like 2004. But yeah, I forgot that it was him. I was like thinking about it throughout the entire movie, and then I saw in the credits and I'm like, oh cool, I was right. I liked his character too. I forgot to mention about him actually. At first Steve doesn't like him because he thinks like, oh, it's some accounting toady or whatever. I don't think that's the exact nickname he uses, but I'm trying to remember off the top of my head here. And the accountant's just like, dude, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'm an accountant or whatever, but I'm also a human being. And then they end up being cool. And Steve's kind of a big jerk throughout the whole movie, but I'm actually glad he decides to go rescue the accountant. I mean, probably not also just because, the bank would be pissed of like, hey, we sent this guy to keep track of your budget and you let him conveniently get like kidnapped by pirates or whatever. He'd probably be in like legal trouble and stuff, but also, they do end up sort of becoming friends and stuff, or at least, chill. That Steve decides like, yeah, we gotta rescue this guy. Because it was originally supposed to be Ned, but then it turns out the kidnappers, they're Filipino, and the accountant's the only one who can like actually speak to them and everything. So then he ends up getting kidnapped instead, and then they go to rescue him like a bit later in the movie. But I like that the movie actually starts at a slow pace of like the 10 days of the crew getting ready. And most of it is just focused on like ship life and stuff, because they're in this ship for a long time. And it's one of those kind of like the Royal Tenenbaums, that's more focused on like character interactions and stuff rather than the plot, and I'm noticing I am starting to kind of like some of those more. I mean, not for like every movie, because like the Grand Budapest Hotel is one that's like more focused on plot and it's like very, very fast paced, but I love that one. Or like Moonrise Kingdom's kind of the opposite of that, where it's also focused on the plot but like a bit more slow paced. I used to think the ones that were more focused on the characters, like this one or Royal Tenenbaums, were like a bit more boring, but I think they've definitely grown on me now. I'm going to be honest with you, I can't remember most of the beginning of this movie, so I'm just going to talk about when they run into the pirates and like everything afterwards, because that's like the only stuff I can remember right now. I did not realize I was this sleepy until I'm like actually struggling to recall the events in this movie. Damn. Okay, they end up having an encounter with pirates, and that's pretty crazy. I mean, it's Steve being Steve because he's not only like really stubborn and believes he's right about everything, he's also just kind of a dick to everyone, which makes him hard to like as a character. Like, he eventually grows and apologizes and stuff, but it like takes him a while. But he does have a really cool moment when everyone is like tied up and they're all in danger, and the reason it even ends up happening in the first place is he's even warned by one of the crew members too. There's this woman that's like, hey, we should go through protected waters even though it's longer, and Steve's like, nah, I know a shortcut, we can go through this way and we're gonna get there so much faster. But then they end up having the encounter with the pirates, and the girl ends up being really pissed and quitting, which is fair. But yeah, Steve ends up he ends up getting a gun and actually saving everyone. I think they only end up killing like one person and everyone else gets away, and they kidnap the accountant, but he manages to get everyone to leave and saves the lives of like his team. So that was pretty cool. It's visually a cool sequence as well. It actually surprised me. He's like more of a badass than you'd expect. And it's just funny to me that like he's able to keep his crew alive. And then Jeff Goldblum's character, with all his resources and confidence and whatever, his entire team gets like killed off and stuff. So I guess it doesn't really matter about how many resources you have. It's more of like, how can you use the things around you and the experience and stuff. Because I'm assuming that Steve and his team have more experience. I think his character is probably like 50 or something anyway. But yeah, that whole sequence is really cool. What else? I mentioned the relationship between Ned and the reporter lady. Something I liked that they end up doing, I thought was kind of sweet, is she's thinking about leaving, and he gives her these letters, and she's saying how she'll have to write back to him. And he says that he already put stamps on them and the address and everything. And I thought that was really sweet, because especially because I like actually handwrite letters to people, and sometimes I do kind of forget addresses and things, and I have to dig up like old letters to look and everything. And the fact that he already had it like pre-prepped for her, and all she has to do is write it and mail it, that's really nice. He gives her like a whole stack, and then she decides, I'm just gonna write you a letter right now, and she does, and she slips it under his door and stuff. And then when Ned dies, she ends up putting the stack on top of his like casket, or something. Um, so their relationship kind of starts developing more after that, and it's this whole thing too where they're very sweet together, but then Steve is also in love with the reporter, except he's like way too old for her, so it's kind of weird. And plus, his character is already in love with like Angelica Houston's character, but they're not really like a couple anymore. I don't think they like divorced, but you can tell she's not interested in him anymore. I feel like this is like the second movie I've seen where she plays a character that's married to like the main character, but they're not really like together anymore or anything. Yeah, I don't know if there's any others where she's like actually with someone, but I think they do end up sort of getting back together at the end, if it's anything to go off of by the credits, like montage and stuff. What else? The part when they end up finally meeting the creature. Oh wait, no. My favorite part actually is when they end up trying to rescue the accountant. Once Angelica Houston decides to join the team again, and she's like financing them. Well, it's not technically her, it's like her parents, but still, she's like the brains behind Team Zizu and everything. She kind of has to be there. They end up going to this island, and there's this like broken down hotel that's like growing out plants and stuff. And they end up going in, and it's treated like a rescue mission. They all have like guns and stuff. It's kind of funny. They end up finding the accountant like right after they consider leaving and thinking like, okay, we got to go and go to the other islands to check or whatever. So they get like super lucky with that. And they could have just left, honestly, but then they end up trying to follow around this like three-legged dog that's been going with them the whole time named Cody. And then, or not the whole time, but it was left behind when they originally got invaded by the pirates. And Steve's like following around Cody, and it's it's kind of funny when I think about it. And he sees this room, and Jeff Goldblum is there, but so is like the entire pirate crew, and they're just like playing cards or whatever. And then they see Steve, and Jeff Goldblum's like, oh, Steve, oh, you came to rescue me or whatever. And then Jeff Goldblum immediately gets shot, and then the pirates try to start shooting Steve, and it turns into like an all-out fight and everything. And then they got to escape the hotel, and they end up using dynamite. And they do actually rescue Jeff Goldblum and keep him alive and everything. And I don't know if he actually joins their team. The ending of this is like a little confusing. Not the like ending, but like during the credits, when they're going over the characters, you see all the characters join Steve, and then they go onto a boat at the end. And I assume to like their next adventure or whatever. But then you also see someone that looks like Ned at the top, who's in like a uniform, but like Ned's dead at this point, so I'm assuming it's just like a fun little like fantasy sequence or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, they rescue Jeff Goldblum and the accountant, and then those two are with them for like the rest of the adventure. And there's the whole thing with Ned, which visually was kind of crazy, where it's like him and Steve in a helicopter, and it's like right after they've like completely made up and everything, and they're like buddies for life now, like father, son, whatever. And they're in this helicopter trying to find the signal to find the creature, and then the helicopter ends up going down. I think it's because like it's a really old helicopter too. I think that's the only reason it like fails. And they end up falling in the water, and I think Ned like drowns or something, because they mentioned earlier in the movie he can't swim, and Steve tries to save him, but he can't. And then it like cuts to Ned's funeral, and right before it like shows the funeral, I thought like, oh, maybe Steve did try to save him, he just has to like get him on board. It's almost kind of weird to think about, where like earlier in the movie, Ned almost drowns, and Steve has to like blow air into him to save him, and he ends up surviving, and it's fine. It almost makes me think like, because he survived that one time, I guess he doesn't get to survive this time, like you can't save him every time sort of thing. But but yeah, and then they have his funeral, and I got kind of sad. But then they get to go and see the creature afterwards, And I remember feeling disappointed by that scene, but now I'm cool with it. I think Henry Selick's the one that does like the stop motion, because there's a lot of like animated creatures and things in this, including with the final encounter, with the leopard shark or whatever. I think that's why I was originally disappointed about it. I thought it was gonna be like CGI or something. I was expecting some like massive, huge thing, and instead the way they do it, they have the submarine as like a miniature, and then this little figure of like the leopard shark swimming around or whatever. Like it is actually cool. It is like a cool experience for the characters and stuff. Of like, yeah, they finally got to see it. But I think visually, originally, it wasn't what I expected, and I was disappointed. Okay, sorry about that. My dad had came by. He didn't say anything, but I saw him at the door, and I wanted to say something, so I muted the mic really quick. Shoot, what was I saying? Yeah, the final encounter, I was fine with it now. It was pretty cool, and it's a nice moment too, because like, I'll be honest, I kind of forgot what their goal was by the end. I think because I'd seen the movie and I remembered them finding the creature. But I can imagine like the first time you watch it, I don't remember if that's how I felt or not. The whole time you wonder like, was the creature even real at all? Especially because like that's their whole goal, and then Ned dies, and you almost want to think like, damn, he needed to die for something, you know? Like imagine if the creature wasn't real and he like, died for nothing out there in that helicopter. But I mean, whether he died or not, I mean, he did, but what I'm trying to say is, he, got to reunite with his dad, and they were on good terms and stuff, and finally got accepted and had this, like, father figure in his life. And it's even said after Ned dies that, like, Steve was considering adopting, Ned anyway, even though, like, as Angelica Houston points out, Ned was already, like, 30 or something. Um, but, it's still, like, the thought that counts and everything. But yeah, and then they go home and we get to see part of their film, and it sounds like it was a success. That Steve is back to his original standard and stuff, probably because he had to go through so much character development and everything. But yeah, he starts as like such a jerk and then becomes a lot nicer. And then the ending's nice where I think it's him. He's next to like some kind of award or whatever. He's not even at his own premiere. He's like outside, and then Klaus's son is there, and Steve puts him on his shoulders and walks out, and then everyone else is like following him. And then it cuts to a different thing where it's Steve and all the people in his crew, and they're all like running together back to the ship and stuff. And they all look really happy, but I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be like an epilogue thing or just like a fun little thing in the credits. But yeah, that's The Life Aquatic. It's pretty good. I need to listen to the soundtrack again, like I mentioned. I really like those David Bowie covers. Um, and I'll have to watch it again sometime, because we didn't order this one on DVD. I'm like kind of glad, because I didn't know if I was gonna like this again, to be honest. But damn, now I kind of want it on DVD, so I might have to look for that myself. Especially because like at the time I'm watching this, Black Friday's like at the end of the month or something, so maybe I'll get it. But I'm happy, that I rewatched this one. I don't know when I'll get around to the other Wes Anderson movies, because my dad and I ordered a couple of them on DVD, but I don't know when they're coming in. I mean, by the time these reviews come out, I should hopefully have them and be able to talk about them and stuff. But there's other movies I'm gonna watch with my dad in the meantime. So you might end up getting those reviews first. I don't know. I also don't know when I'm gonna put some of these reviews, because my movie thing with my group of friends is, I guess, just an ongoing thing forever, 3 times a week, which I'm perfectly happy about. We're watching some great stuff. Um, but I want to keep the reviews, like, in terms of December, like, clear around, like, Christmas, in case we watch any Christmas movies at that point. So I'm recording this a month early. So I might just start putting some of these, maybe after this review, in, like, January or something. I I don't know, just kind of like spread them around. You'll definitely be getting more movie reviews from me. But yeah, that's it for Life Aquatic. See you next time.